politics, and more politics. I'm Ed Kelly, editor of the Oklahoman. With me from Washington is Chris Castile, chief of the Oklahoman's Washington Bureau, and Mark Green, national editorial writer for the Oklahoman. Both men are frequent contributors here on News OK TV. Okay, gentlemen, Hillary Clinton's reference in her campaign against Barack Obama to Robert Kennedy being murdered 40 years ago next month brought howls of protest in some Democratic circles. Will the criticism of Senator Clinton that she raised the specter of Senator Kennedy's death as a reason to stay in the race have any effect as this campaign plays out?
I don't think it will have any effect at all, Ed. Senator Obama is nearing the number of delegates he needs to clinch the nomination, and right. I don't think Florida and Michigan are going to be resolved in such a way that gives Senator Clinton a chance to get back in it. Look, it was an unfortunate formulation of words that she used. I'm not trying to be an apologist for Senator Clinton, but you have to assume that she didn't mean to say Senator Obama may not make it through this campaign alive. But again, she made other comments in the last couple of weeks about white voters, and maybe she's just tired, but clearly her filter isn't always working properly. But again, I don't think it's going to have any impact on the race.
Right.
Now, I agree with Chris. I think that nearing the end of a very long campaign, these candidates are getting increasingly tired. Their guard is less effective, I suppose, and she might have gotten by saying, you never know what's going to happen in a campaign. Anything could happen. And if she just left it at that, she'd have been fine. But her mouth kept running, and some unfortunate things came out. But I don't think it's going to have that much effect either. Okay,
let's talk about the current occupant of the White House, George W. Bush. His veto of the Farm Bill, as you know, was easily overridden in both the House and the Senate, as many Republicans abandoned him on this issue. Do you see this as a sign that Republicans on Capitol Hill, many of whom have their own races to run this fall, are distancing themselves from the president?
Well, that it could be, but I think that would probably be well down the list of considerations that most of the lawmakers would have been thinking about when they were considering the Farm Bill. The farm legislation is so much about local politics and local considerations, and these guys are voting interest in their districts and their states. And what happens to the president, what he does, is probably not real high on their list of things they think about.
I think that's exactly right, Ed. I think a better example of that might have been the vote last week on expanding the GI Bill, right, where a lot of Republicans, including Senator Jim Inhofe, abandoned the White House on that. But as Mark said, the Farm Bill is really about home state interests, and really there's probably not a lot of issues that these guys hear more from constituents on, including local interest groups or local farm bureaus or ranchers and cattlemen or whatever they may be than the Farm Bill. There's something in there for everybody, and it makes it pretty hard to vote against it.
Okay. Speaking of the president, his former press secretary, Scott McClellan, has a new book that's just out about his time in the White House, and it's critical at certain points of the president and his circle of advisors. Where does a press secretary's loyalty lie, and when does he have the responsibility to tell the truth as he knows it?
I think that's a great question, Ed. It's just another example of a public official who had a chance to say what he thought was the, quote, truth when he was in that office, but chose to do it later in a book. And a press secretary maybe doesn't know exactly all of the facts that he's being asked to respond to from the press. But in that case, do you say something that you know not to be maybe not accurate, or do you just say no comment? I mean, clearly, there's no question about who's paying his salary when he's in the White House. It's the public, and that's who he owes the truth to, and he doesn't owe it to him, 2 years after he leaves office.
These things have an interesting dynamic to them in the sense that a former employee comes out with a big splashy book, and then people will say, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he was misinformed, and there'll be a debate back and forth. And in the end, it seems to always come down to the fact that somebody's out to make some money. As Chris said, Scott McClellan could have probably made a bigger statement for truth and justice and the American way, so to speak, by stepping down. If he was being asked to lie, he maybe should have just quit instead of continuing on with the facade. But instead, he writes a book, and the administration isn't over yet, and he's going to make money. And I guess taxpayers wonder where their cut of the royalties is going to come from.
Okay, guys, thank you. Stay here on NewsOK.com for continuous coverage of campaign 2008.